All right, everyone. So a lunar eclipse here this week, very powerful on Friday. Lunar eclipse in Leo, so it is a time of doing the status check, of now re-examining how the life path is going. It's very powerful because the eclipses do have to do with the nodes. This is a full moon next to the north node, which essentially means that about 6 months ago, about September 1st, if you can think back to that, there was likely some new shift along your life journey, maybe some new insights, maybe things in regards to where you can have a bit more passion in your life, or maybe something in particular you're passionate about, or expressing yourself more. So whatever that's been, which is creative, self-expression, that passionate sort of energy, now it's the status check, all right? So we come up to the full moon, lunar eclipse time, doing the status check in terms of how are things going with this new path, essentially from the past 6 months. So that's very powerful through this insight that we're gaining through this lunar eclipse. With that information, it's going to help us make some adjustments. So that's essentially what we want to do this week is, sort of re-examine, see the big picture. How are things going? What has been culminated over the past 6 months here? And with the insights that do come in, then making whatever adjustments are necessary to continue with these new beginnings. Again, very much relating to where we can have that passion and that self-expression. So this lunar eclipse is going to be very supportive. It is forming a grand cross as well as a sextile up to Jupiter. So a lot of supportive energy about that, which we'll talk about. We also do happen to have Mercury sextiling up to Venus at the same time as the lunar eclipse. So as an opening to all this, maybe a bit of enjoying the mental stimulation, sharing ideas, connecting with others. Could be good for relationships and our values. All right, so let's go ahead and look at this in more detail when we return. All right, so here is the chart for the lunar eclipse. So in Leo, as you can see here, it is just a penumbral lunar eclipse, so it's not actually, total eclipse, but still, especially astrologically speaking, it is this very powerful time. Here's all the easy aspects I was talking about. You got this Grand Trine involving Saturn and Uranus. You got a sextile up to Jupiter. It's essentially forming what you can see here as a envelope sort of pattern. All right, you can see it's got this box here. It's got these oppositions between Uranus and Jupiter, the sun and moon, forming this box. And then the sort of sextile is up to Saturn, sort of being the top of the envelope, if you will. So, so what this essentially means is, first of all, in terms of the Grand Trine, as a lot of you know, Grand Trines are very supportive. Saturn's supporting this. I think with this status check about, again, where we can bring in a bit of this passion and interest and self-expression in our life. I think we're all collectively feeling quite grounded with the whole thing, willing to take things slow, willing to see the big picture. And Saturn and Ophiuchus has been helping us really see the deep truth, and establish things in our life that are based on truth. And so with that deeper perspective, of wanting a bit of stability, a bit of structure based on depth, based on things that truly matter in life. I think that's, that sort of quality there that's certainly available with this is very much supporting that self-expression. The other side to it is Uranus trining up to it does suggest that in Pisces, Uranus has been helping us find what you might consider spiritual freedom or spiritual liberation, right? Pisces is the planet of letting go, of surrendering. We have a lot of Pisces energy right now at the moment too, with Venus and Mars here. So it's a very intuitive time. But with this trine to Uranus specifically, where we can detach, where we can let go, and that being a freeing thing, as I've been saying with Uranus here. Uranus has been transiting this part of the chart, this constellation, for about 7 to 8 years. Okay, so there is freedom with this. I think all in all, collectively, we are willing to be ourselves. We are willing to mix things up, see things outside of the normal way of looking at things. And that progressive sort of attitude and that freeing sort of liberating attitude does very much support this awareness and, again, this continuation of this culminating time. So the key there with that, though, is the detachment, right? The more willing we are to let go, to surrender, to detach, the more freeing it can certainly be there. All right, so it could even be, too, maybe getting some of that intuitive time, alone time and all that, could be freeing as well for you personally. So that's the trine side to it. There's the sextile up to Jupiter. Jupiter's recently gone retrograde earlier this week. And I feel like this is very much associated with the lunar eclipse because of the fact that Jupiter is about life path. And he's been retrograde these past few days. And so there's been this sort of rehashing, reconsidering. What are the possibilities in our life, right? What are our belief systems? What is our life path? Where's it going? So all of this reflection or reconsideration that we've been doing, I think it's very much assisting this, especially in the sextile. So again, insight. And Jupiter retrograde is particularly the type of insight that's within. Inner guidance, intuition. You know, Jupiter does naturally rule Pisces traditionally. So he's retrograde, which means we have to go within for that guidance, for that intuition. It does make it a very, receptive time in that sense. And that a lot of probably what we're gaining awareness about is internal guidance, simply because of the fact of it's a lunar eclipse, right? Which is essentially that the Earth is eclipsing now the moon, which is lowering the solar energy from bouncing off of it, bringing up the moon's energy, which is intuition, which is inner guidance, all of that same sort of stuff. So very good to listen. I think on Friday in particular, listening to see what is shifting, what new perspectives are coming in, and how you can continue to cultivate these things from over the past 6 months, if anything in particular, or just simply activating that self-expression, that creativity, that playful, lighthearted side to life. That's essentially what Leo is all about. It's about really connecting to the emotional, intrinsic values of ourselves, the inner values, the intrinsic, the emotions, and literally expressing them out into the world, to share who we are, to make the world lighter and more playful, more fun. Not directly necessarily, it might be for some of you or more entertaining and that sort of thing, but more so about just literally giving ourselves, expressing ourselves is the whole purpose. But as a result, it does give and contribute. It's essentially what the world needs, and that's the Aquarius side to it. So anyways, that's the lunar eclipse, very powerful. Saturn being at the top of this envelope formation, I think, is playing a big role with all of this, keeping the structure. I think there is this sort of concept of this whole thing that things are taking time. There's patience. It's the beginning of the year, right? There's things being built. And I think with that attitude, it can be very constructive, especially with the sun in Capricorn. This whole lunar cycle has been about developing these qualities of patience, persistence, discipline, structure, pragmatism, productiveness, just that reserve, that responsibility. So I think we are willing to assume the responsibility. And I want to say too, when there's a lot of easy aspects, especially in a configuration like this, it can be easy to rest on our laurels. We can be passive. We can not take action. But especially with this envelope formation, it is saying that there's a lot of easy aspects, but we do have a choice. We do have opportunity, and the opportunities are presenting themselves. And we can choose to cultivate them, right? So that's very powerful. The other side to it too, with the opposition, not only with the sun and moon and the lunar eclipse, but Uranus and Jupiter have been opposing. So there's been this push and pull of wanting freedom, in our lives this new year, since December, wanting freedom, also seeing these possibilities. And there's this sort of push and pull. On one hand, we might want freedom. On the other hand, we might want possibilities or our belief systems or, potentials. So whatever that push and pull is, it is about integrating the two, saying that there are possibilities and we're learning a lot about them with that Jupiter retrograde, and there is the importance of being who we are and again, expressing ourselves and cultivating a bit of that freedom of individuality. So freedom and possibilities can be united, can be cultivated. It is about balance, but if you feel a bit of push and pull with this, lunar eclipse in terms of making choices and things, maybe finding the solution that does give the possibilities as well as your personal freedom might be that choice if it is something in particular. All right, so that is the lunar eclipse. Generally speaking, with these aspects, collectively, the status check of the past 6 months regarding to Leo, regarding to where we can have a bit more creativity, self-expression, passion in life, ignite that inner flame, all right? So through that, through what we're learning about this, I think this is going to be a great week for making shifts and changes if you are gaining that inner guidance to do so. Now, within this context, of course, Mercury is sextiling Venus, completely separate from this lunar eclipse. but it's definitely associated. And this has to do with the fact that even over these next 6 months, because it is associated with this eclipse, there is this sort of opening now to maybe learn, share, communicate. Maybe it's in relationships. I think we can enjoy a bit of that, a bit of learning and sharing in general, whether it's with ourselves through picking up a book, doing some practical learning, maybe sharing in relationships, ideas, things like this. Our minds can be at ease, actually, with this. Mercury's the mind, Venus is ease, it's enjoyment, it's sensuality. We're seeing our values right now, there's support for that. And we're communicating probably in a quite harmonious sort of way, or thinking more harmoniously, you could say. So it's not a major aspect, but because it's involving, this time period with this lunar eclipse, I think certainly knowing that there is an opening here to really get into the practical learning, sharing, exchanging, and even interconnecting side of things could be another supportive element to it. So here's all the aspects with it. The sun will be sextiling Uranus as we approach Friday. So there is this opening and probably feeling a bit more of the freedom. The moon will be in Cancer, I do want to say. So, sort of approaching it on Thursday, approaching that lunar eclipse, maybe getting into the watery side of things. Again, maybe listening to the intuition, going within, maybe a bit of privacy, getting some time out with home, family, things like this. The Cancer is essentially about connecting to our emotions and our past and that reflective side of things. And then as we approach it, and then the moon will be shifting into Leo, and I think especially on Friday, that's when the more of the Leo expressive, passionate sort of energies culminate, and that'll be at 20:43 Eastern time. The lunar eclipse, it is visible. It's just going to be a dimming of the moon. It won't be a total lunar eclipse, but you can probably see it, the moon dimming, and again, that's symbolic for going within, listening to inner guidance, that intuition. Then as we get into the weekend here with Saturday, the sun does trine up to Jupiter. So yeah, this is, I think, after the lunar eclipse, probably feeling a bit more open-minded, a bit more expansive. It's still being reworked. Again, Jupiter's retrograde. We're reconsidering possibilities. But certainly, I think with the sun, expressing ourselves, feeling a bit of that Leo energy, expressive, creative, fun, playful, something like that, passion, a little bit. And that's the whole point. The North Node isn't about getting to an end point with it. It's not like we're going to completely individually cultivate all this passion and self-expression, to whatever it is we're thinking about or want. This is about learning. And that's essentially what we've been doing 2016, 2017 collectively, is learning more about passion, learning more about what we're interested in, about expressing ourselves and all of that. And I think with that attitude, willingness to learn, and to, again, listen to whatever guidance we're getting at this time to sort of make some adjustments to continue to learn along that journey. I think it's a great way of working with this. All right, so hope you guys have an awesome lunar eclipse. Thank you again for all of your support, and I will see you all Sunday for the daily forecast. Take care.